Hi, and welcome to episode 1 of the pre-podcast series of the Productive Introvert Community Podcast. So this is our first official episode of the pre-series. If you listened to episode 0, that was kind of the introduction, you heard a bit about the topics that are going to be in the podcast. So the podcast is coming out in July. And in this pre-podcast series, I thought I would share my process with you around building the podcast in the next 6 weeks. So I'm a total newbie when it comes to podcasting. So we will learn together and just see this kind of as a case study of, what it could be like. So we shall see how this goes. And so I've decided that over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to share a couple of times a week what I'm working on, the questions that are popping up, the things that are going well and not going well. And let's see how this goes. For today, I wanted to talk about, what I'm working on this week. So this week, I'm working on my channels and my aesthetics. So when I say channels, I mean all the places that I'm going to be sharing the podcast. I run an online business, so there's so much choice of where you can be online. And honestly, you do have to choose your channels. You don't have to be everywhere, especially in the beginning when you're just starting out. That can be quite tiring, and it can diffuse your attention. And that's honestly never a good place to be, especially when you're starting out. So choosing my channels. And then I'm also thinking at this stage for me about the aesthetics. So why do I start there? Okay. I'm starting there because I like to think from the user. So the people or the person who will be listening or watching the podcast. In this case, watching, because the pre-podcast series will only be on YouTube. The podcast itself will also be on an audio on all the normal podcast channels. So I haven't figured out that part yet. So right now I'm just actually focusing on the YouTube channel video side of things. But for both, the same applies. What will the person, so you in this case, you're listening to this right now, what do you want to see? Or what do you want to, what's useful for you to see? And the reason why I start there, I'm not saying that this is the best place to start for everyone, but this is the best place for me to start. And the reason is because it really fits in with the way that I naturally work, my natural process. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But in practical terms, what I've been doing is I've decided that I'm probably going to use about 5 different channels, but I'm also going to start repurposing materials more. So especially if you have an online business, or if you're promoting your work in any way online or talking about it online, you can find yourself creating a lot of content. And I've been doing that over the past year, coming up to 2 years now. And I love to write. So writing about my work is not an obstacle for me, but I do notice that creating tons and tons of content, it can be quite tiring. And sometimes inspiration isn't always there. And at the same time, you kind of want to, so the way that online works, not everyone sees everything that you post online, for example. That's just the way that the algorithms works, and there's so much noise online. Their feeds are constantly full. So if you want the people who you want to reach to actually see you, you kind of have to talk about the things you're doing a lot of times. You end up repeating yourself a lot, kind of, for at least that's what it feels like. But for someone else, it could be the first time that they're seeing or hearing this. So repurposing content and like talking about the same thing in different ways is very useful from that point of view, and also because people learn in different ways. It's just one of the reasons why I've chosen to do the podcast both in video and in audio. Yeah, so about those 5 channels, I think it's 5, not maybe as we go along, we'll see if I'm right. 1 or 2 may come back, be added, or they may be discarded later on. We'll see. So my website is going to be the home of the podcast. It's going to be there, and it's going to replace the blog that I have on my website now. So the blog will still be there, but it will also revolve around the content of the podcast. So that's one way that I'm repurposing that. And then, of course, it's going to be the YouTube channel where these videos will be. And that will basically be the same format as the audio version of the podcast later on, just in video format. Some people love video, some people love audio. So just to give that option. So those are already like 3 different places where you can find this content. I've also decided, I've been testing it out with LinkedIn newsletter. So it's a relatively new feature of LinkedIn. You could always put articles in, but now you can also send a newsletter that every time that you place an article, it will notify the people who have subscribed to your LinkedIn newsletter. And I was so excited about that to try it out. I've been looking at this feature for a while. And on Tuesday, when I did episode 0 of this pre-podcast series, I was shocked and so excited that like 10 people signed up in the first 5 minutes. And that was quiet. I was like, yes. And I think I just checked this morning and we're up to 83 subscribers on the LinkedIn newsletter. So it's so excited to know that people are interested in productive introvert community. So I hope that the content will be helpful to all of you and that you'll, that I can keep that interest for and to help you out with the things that you're struggling with around those topics. I think those are 4. And then, of course, I have my own newsletter, which is a newsletter that you can sign up for. And if you're on my newsletter, you've already been receiving my emails every week for the past 2 years. So yay for me for keeping that up. I just have to celebrate for a second because that's not a small feat. Come on, let's just not underestimate how much that takes to kind of keep those things up. So if you're in a similar situation, give yourself a little applause and celebrate those small wins of taking those steps every day. Yeah, so and then of course the general social media channels, I'll be sharing snippets as well. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Those are the channels that I've chosen for now to go with. I think those were like 7 different places. So it sounds like a lot, but I'm going to set it up in a way that I can reuse the same content. So we can go on about this, but I'm gonna stop here right now. We can circle back in another episode because I want to keep these episodes short and sweet. But I want to round up. I want to go back to the question that I asked before. Why do I start here? So like I said, I don't think this is the best place for everyone to start, but it's a great place for me to start because it fits in with the way that I naturally operate, sort of my natural process. And that has to do with the way that you naturally solve problems. So this is quite unique for everyone. And I wasn't aware of that consciously at first, but it's the questions that naturally come up to you and the way that you solve problems in a natural way, you kind of veer towards that in any situation, be it work or private life. And when I discovered that for myself, it actually made a lot more sense why this is a logical place for me to start. So this is something that I learned from my mentor, and it's the natural advantage framework. And she and I, we both help people discover that in our coaching programs. And for me, it's all about how can I help the people who are important in that context. So that's you in this case. How can I help you to feel supported and to feel like you can make the choices that you want to make. That is very core idea in my natural advantage. So that's why it's a natural place for me to start with the user, and thus starting with my channels and my aesthetics. This could be completely different for you. So in our coaching, we help people discover what their core question is and their natural advantage. And it can give you a lot of insight about your natural process, and also like connecting that to productivity. When you lean into that, it becomes so much easier to kind of go through that process and to get the results. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm going to be back tomorrow. This week, I'm coming in a little kind of often. We'll slow it down a little bit as we go along. But of course, yeah, a lot of stuff has already happened that I wanted to share with you. But I'm going to keep them short and sweet. Like, we're going to go for maximum 15 minutes so you don't get overloaded or overwhelmed. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.